So how can we be better communicators? That's a question that people are always asking me, because when I coach people, when I work with people, they're typically asking me like, Martine, how do I communicate this to my client? How do I communicate this to my son, my father, my spouse, those kinds of things? Those are the kind of questions I get from people. And when I think about the curiosity theory and I think about my workshop, the beginning of it is all about something I call curiously investigating, which is the first skill that we want to teach in the curiosity theory. And curiously investigating is kind of like you'd be like the Sherlock Holmes of a conversation. You're like the guy that is actually genuinely interested in investigating like what's happening, not only with yourself, but the other person. You see, what I find is in most conversations, people have assumptions. They think they know what the other person's talking about, and rightfully so, because most of us are pretty smart people and we've made it this far in life and we understand certain things about life. But what we bring along with that understanding is we bring along our we bring along our versions, our definitions of different things. How and what I mean by different definitions is the definitions that we think about money, or we think about health, or we think about love. We have our own definitions, and that comes as a result of how we were brought up. You know, just today alone, I wrote a list of some of the people that I was speaking to, and let me kind of give you a list of. Let me give you a list of some of the people that I was speaking to. A police officer out of North County, and I'm in San Diego, so it's kind of like North San Diego. A fireman out of Long Beach, a school teacher out of East County, and another school teacher out of Los Angeles, a tow truck driver, a retired military officer, an engineer, a personal trainer, and several realtors I spoke to today, escrow officers, and I spoke to everybody on my team. And every single person I spoke to has their own language. They have their own perspective. They have their own needs in every one of our conversations. And what used to happen to me is I would enter a conversation and make it all about me. This is what I want. This is what I want. And I would just leave the conversation, not even addressing what the other person wanted, because what I wanted was so important. And that was really the most important part of the conversation. And what that got me is that got me in a lot of trouble. And I lost friends. I lost transactions. I lost business. I lost money. And I had to figure out a different way. So as I was figuring out the curiosity theories, I was putting that together, I noticed there was a concept that kept coming up, and it was investigating like what was happening in the conversation. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about curiously investigating our own perspectives and other people's perspectives. And, the questions that people ask are like, how do I talk to my father? How do I talk to my kids? How do I talk to my neighbors in a way that people feel good when they left the conversation, and people feel that they were heard, that they got their needs met, maybe that they were contributed to, maybe they're maybe a little inspired. And today we're going to take apart communication, and we're going to put it back together in a way that hopefully works for all of us. I have three amazing guests, three amazing friends of mine that I'm going to bring on. And one of them is Renee. I think her last name is Reisch. Is that how you say it, Renee?
Yes, Reisch, correct.
I would say Reisch. And she has you have something called Finding Your Voice. And then I have Stephen Wener, which is one of my best friends. And he wrote a book called The Communication Code, which I think is going to be very, very useful for today's conversation. And then Prizm, who is probably the most talented brander that I know. And I know a lot of people that do branding and marketing. And I was just telling Renee that, I'm 55 years old. So when I was 54, I was in a workshop with Prizm, and it was about a 3 or 4 hour workshop. And he spoke for about 45 minutes to an hour. I learned more about marketing and communicating my message in that hour than I had my whole entire life. And I'm talking spending thousands of dollars to try to learn how to do it. So I thought that if we're going to talk communication, there's going to be very, very few people that are going to be as good about communicating, not only verbally, but mentally and on paper as Prizm. So I want to thank you guys for all being here today.
Thanks,
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with Prizm. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and then we're going to go around and we'll do Stephen, and then we'll finish up with Renee. You got it.
You want me to start off?
Yeah. Why don't you go and start, bro?
Oh, you rocking and rolling?
Yeah, we're going,
might be
man.
a
We're
delay.
live, bro. Yeah. We're live. So tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and just share with us some goodness there, Prizm. Do we have a bad connection, bro? All right, I'm gonna have Steven go real quick.
Maybe. So I am a digital nomad, and
Uh-huh. I think you're
we're
going
good.
in and out, my man.
Let me see.
All right, I'm gonna go. Steven, tell
Maybe
us
start
about
with
you.
me. Let me fix this connection.
Hey, brother.
Okay, we'll let Prizm fix this connection.
Sorry about that, Prizm. There's nothing like technical difficulties. But that's one way to communicate, right? How do we get out of that?
Absolutely.
So, as Martin said, I mean, he and I have been great friends for many years. I'm in residential real estate, and I've been selling residential real estate for about 27 years, but I also grew up, when I was 10 years old, I started door knocking. So at a very early age, I started to learn and understand, even though I couldn't quite put it together, but I started to learn and understand what went into creating relationships or interest in a heartbeat. Because when you're knocking at somebody's door, first of all, you're a stranger. Second of all, you're totally unannounced. Third of all, what are you pushing? And fourth of all, why do they want to buy it from you? And all of this has to happen in minutes.
Yeah.
And so I learned something really early on. My dad taught me there are strokers, brokers, lonely people, and mooches, right?
I love that.
So that's something that I also put in my book, because it was very interesting to start to learn how to define who you were talking to. And so many of us just think that we go into conversations and it's a conversation, but it isn't, right?
It's not, yeah.
Everything that you had mentioned, Martin, all those people that you announced, they all had a different personality and a different story and different triggers. And in my walk of being in real estate for 27 years, sometimes first of all, I like, how on earth is it 27 years? It's like I have a middle-aged child almost. And the second right, is how did I survive? How did I not only survive, but thrive in real estate?
Mm.
And so, as Martin puts it, there's curiosity around that. So that's actually what led me to write the book on what I've done, because I noticed that certain things could be done and replicated for people where it's universal. So I look forward to diving into all of that. But I'm a fan and a fanatic of understanding the human connection, because it's what we do, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Prizm, how you doing? You got a better connection? You good?
I think
okay, cool. So tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and you know, how you relate to communication, how it's important for you.
So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a consultant. I'm also a digital nomad. So I travel around lifestyle. I've been to many countries in Central America, and yeah, just living a vacation lifestyle, but all within the context of consulting and building brands for experts. So I've been doing brand identity for a little over 15 years. And there's two powerful things about expressing your brand verbally and visually. And so tonight I'll touch on any topics as far as expressing, you know, your voice or your messaging or who you are trying to communicate to from the verbal side. So I'm looking at communications from messaging and connecting so that your messaging sticks and it's relevant from a strategic standpoint and also from a human standpoint. So it's messaging communication through the content business.
So from the strategic standpoint and the human standpoint, is that what you said? I would definitely want to get back to that. That's really powerful. Renee, tell us a little bit about you.
This is really interesting. Listen to Steven and to Prizm, because I'm all about the voice. And I am a transformational and business coach, and I lost my voice to an illness in 2013, and doctors didn't know if I would ever speak again. And by the grace of God and my best friend, who's my angel, my father in heaven, I got it back. And it took a lot of vocal coaching, a lot of work on my part, and a lot of prayers. And I'm able to now share it with everybody else. I ended up writing a book that went to #1 bestseller. As Martine mentions, it's called Finding Your Voice, Unlock Your Chains and Unleash Your Greatness. I believe the chains I was bound up in were my very own. And the greatness that I'm now releasing is my voice to share, to be the vessel for others who feel they have lost theirs. I believe that happens to us in life. I lost it physically, but I believe the physical loss came from the metaphoric loss of me not using my voice in my own life. And it manifested physically in my health. Lessons learned, right?
Voice, and you then help people get their voices now. So one of the things about the curiosity thing about the show that we do is to bring people in that have different perspectives, and we're going to talk about one perspective. And the perspective I'd like to start with, or the idea, the concept I'd like to start with, is how can we improve communication skills so that we can be better people? Like how does that sound for you? Like if I ask you that question, how can you improve communication skills so that you can be a better person? Well, how would you respond to that?
You're asking.
I'm asking all you guys. I'm asking all you guys.
Okay.
Jump in. Anybody jump in. So yeah, just jump in. I'm not.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Communication skills. It's using your voice. It's using your voice and not holding back on it, because it's the inner voice that creates the fear and the outer voice that overcomes it. There's fear, as we know, is false evidence appearing real. Or you can also turn it around and say, face everything and rise. I'd rather use the latter and face everything and rise, because in rising and lifting ourselves, we're able to lift others up. Like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. Fill your cup, use your voice, and help others along the way.
So improving communication skills is being proactive in the way you use your voice?
It's absolutely being proactive in the way you use your voice, because it's always the way something is said. You can say things so many different ways. It could be hurtful or helpful. You always want to be helpful in the way you're communicating, because the same message can come across very differently to different people. So it's knowing your audience. You say the same thing to 10 people and they may take it differently. One may be offended and one may say, where did you find the offense in that? It just is how you're saying it. So when you know your audience, you know how to communicate best.
Yeah, I'm going to probably challenge that. When you know your audience, you know how to communicate. And I think that, and how I would challenge that, and by all means, Stephen and Prizm, jump in, is that I think that one of the things that we get ourselves in trouble is that we think we know people. It's like we think we know the person. So we're speaking as though, what goes on here is what's going on over there, and we know what they want. And that's in sales, that's huge. And in fatherhood, that's huge, because I think I know what my kids are thinking, and I get in trouble with them because that's not even anywhere close. So I don't think that's what you're saying, but I want to point that out as a concept. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm ready. So what I would say to that one is that it's in being curious and asking questions so you get to know who you're speaking to. You have to ask questions. I come from a corporate background of 25 years with one company, probably over 35 years total in corporate America. And I know in finding out the answers, you must be curious. You must ask the questions. Then you know the best way to communicate to the person in front of you. You got to be curious.
Interesting. Stephen or Prizm, what do you have to say about that?
I'll jump in. I was just going to say, communication is so interesting because I love the fact that Renee is talking about the voice and how incredibly special the voice is because she lost it and got it back. Yeah. I think that's incredible, and especially the work you had to do. So you cherish that. I look at the voice, but then I also look at all the senses, right? What do you smell and how does that communicate to you? What do you see and how does that communicate to you? What do you touch and how does that communicate to you? And so using the senses is one thing, but then also being able to read and question. Again, I love the fact that we can always throw the word curiosity in here, because sometimes, and if I brought my wife in here right now, right, she would like kibosh all of this because she'd go, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He never pays attention or whatever, right?
Which is the point, really.
right? And
Yeah.
and that's what's so interesting. But one of the things that I also wrote a chapter on in my book was about nonverbal cues, right? Micro expressions in the face,
Yeah.
watching how a body reacts. Anything that will trigger a physical response is something that is still communicating to us, but usually we're looking with our eyes, but not always critically. And we're also listening, but not always critically. And depending on what's going on, if I'm talking to somebody and qualifying a new prospect, let's say for real estate, and I say, is there a professional that you're working with in real estate? And they're like, yeah. You know, some people will hear that yeah and go, okay, great, you're taken care of, versus like, wait a minute, what did I just hear? That didn't really sound very convincing to me. And they're like, all they're doing is they set me up on, this dashboard and I'm getting listings. And I'm like, so when's the last time you spoke to them? Well, a month maybe. And I'm like, so
Yeah.
you're telling me that you're being taken care of right now? So it's so fascinating because communication isn't just the senses and paying attention to what another body is doing, but it's also being able to dig in and ask specific questions that could potentially trigger the right chord. And then when you hit the right chord, just like in a note, and for those of you that know Martin with the guitar in his background, right? If you're out of key, it doesn't sound great. But when you hit the right chord, you know that note is what resonated with that person. And then all of a sudden music starts to jive.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
So what I would say is that what you demonstrated to me in that moment, in this last about minute or two that you were talking, was curiously investigating, asking people what's going on, which is what Renee was saying. I'm going to ask questions, and it's not just asking questions; it's about who you are when you're actually asking the questions. There's so many. I work with salespeople, right? And so many people have scripts, and the scripts have questions. And so many people relate to the scripts as, I want something, I'm going to ask this question to get what I want, not necessarily to actually find out what's going on the other side. And that being said, how many times are we in conversations with people and we're asking questions of those people, but our question isn't really a question, it's more like rhetoric, it's like rhetorical. We're trying to get to an answer, so we're asking the question in a way to get to the answer that's kind of like a pre-set up answer. Does that make sense, Renee? Are you with me on that?
It totally does.
Yeah.
I was also thinking when you were speaking about what Stephen said is the body language, and really looking at the body language, and we have all these different senses, to your point, Stephen. Also I was thinking we've got, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And in my situation, I had to listen more and speak less because I was running through life. And I had to be taken out of life so I can listen from within and step back in a very strong, much stronger and powerful way than I ever would have or could have before. And when you're out and, with people, to both of your points, Martine and Stephen, it's looking at the body language, looking and using those other senses. Absolutely. Because when you're being aware and you're being curious of what's in front of you, instead of like going like a, bull in a closet, you really aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
When you stop and take a step back, you really can, because you're listening and you're feeling. We feel in different ways. We can feel, kinesthetically. We can feel with our heart. We can feel, with our mind, what we think. So there's a lot of different ways to enhance those, incorporate those feelings.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great. And for instance, like what's going on right now with Prizm, he's in South America. He's in Central America, South America. I think he's in Central America. And so he's having some problems with his internet. It's not coming as great. And he's got a lot of stuff to contribute. So, for me, it's like I'm managing a lot of different conversations right now. Like, how is Prizm okay? How you guys are going? Let's keep this conversation going. He's in and out. And then, how are people that are listening? How are they responding to that? So there's all the stuff that's going on, but that's what goes on all the time with us anyways. It's like we're driving down the street. There's a pink car that goes this way, a blue car that goes this way. It's a red light, green light. There's all this stuff going on. There's all this information. How do we stay curious with all that stuff that's going on? How do we communicate effectively with people when we have all the stuff that's going on in our head, all the questions, all the needs, all the desires that we have, and then we have somebody across from us that they have their needs and they have their desires, they have their wants? how do we effectively communicate with people, and how do we improve ourselves in communication?
I am one of the things that I'd like to share is judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really about overcoming and removing judgment. Yesterday or the day before, I was in line inside a gas station to pay for something, and I'm telling you, I have not smelled this kind of BO in a long time. And this guy in front of me had like, I don't know if you ran a marathon and then just didn't shower for about a week. That's really what it was like. And in my head, as all these things were being triggered, I just backed away from those natural reactions, right? And it's not that I wanted to be in the vicinity of smelling what I was smelling, but I was like, is it really that bad? Is it something I should make that big of a deal over? I don't know what his life is like. And it was just really interesting because I took like this perspective of what it meant based on my initial reaction. So it's just really fascinating to incorporate judgment into an awareness. And I'm telling you, when you remove that, then you don't have to talk over people when they're trying to make a point and you think you know better and you got to interject. It helps so much in order to understand where that person is coming from fully, so that then you can engage properly because judgment has been removed. And my olfactory senses, right, my smell triggered something in my brain, which told me a story, which made me go, who is this guy? And then I'm like, what the hell? Where did this story come from? Isn't that my story? So, that's one of the interesting things about being investigating curiously. But I didn't ask him why he smelled. I just let it be.
Well, there's two different places you get to investigate. You first get to investigate yourself, right? Like, why am I thinking this? What's the trigger? And then maybe you can ask a question. Prizm, how's the internet going over there?
I'm on a different network now. I have all these different Wi-Fi.
Thanks for working through that. I really appreciate it. Now, I was suggesting right before you went out the last time is that there's in life we have so many things that are going on. Like it's just like there's a million things that are going on, and we're trying to balance. Like for me personally, I'm trying to balance the guests that are coming on. Make sure you guys are taken care of as guests, right? And then I'm watching what's going on with you, and you're just like. You seem to be pretty much a cool cucumber right there, just like working through it, But if it was me, I'd be panicking, you'd see me panic, So thanks for working through that. Tell us about you again, because I don't think we really got to hear about you. And then tell us a little bit about your methodology for communicating.
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a consultant. I'm also a digital nomad. So I'm traveling around like a vacation laptop lifestyle. I'm building, creating, and consulting experts through brand identity. So that's what I've been doing for 15 plus years, and really expressing a powerful brand that's magnetic and attractive. There's two facets. It's the verbal, the creative, and then there's also the visual part. Tonight, I'll touch on the verbal part, which is expressing a message or some sort of point, right? So that's the context of, from a business mindset of how I see communication. And that just naturally filters into being a stronger communicator in all our personal, at home, romantically, with friendships, across the board, all relationships. I don't think anyone will disagree that being a better communicator in business just makes you a better human.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about that. I like what you said about, magnetic and attractive. And so you're using communication for that. So talk a little bit about that. That's really cool. I like that.
So effective communication from a messaging standpoint is really about precision and simplicity. Mm-hmm. And so there's an elegance in being very direct, and to be able to connect to another human, it just comes down to being open and receptive to their emotions, because humans are driven by emotions. So I'm a huge proponent of, you have to really immerse yourself, like Stephen was saying, is get out of you and be willing to perceive and see the point of view from them. And then at that point, you're entering a whole new domain, which is their psychology. And once you can start to understand the psychology of who you're speaking to, you don't have to say much, because you can speak to their emotions and connect to where they're already going, not where you want to go.
I love that. You know, one of the things that I talk about in the curiosity theory is that if we know where we're going to go, like where we want to head to, then we don't necessarily need the people that we're communicating with to get there, because we're doing it. So our job is to help them get to where they want to go. And then ultimately we get to where we want to go. And I think that's, to me, that's my version of what you just said.
Yeah, exactly. It's about being curious enough to want to investigate and ask those powerful questions behind the scenes, or collect. It's about collecting patterns. Once you start to, especially if you're committed, to communicating to a certain type of demographic or a certain type of audience, you're going to find patterns. And the patterns of that psychology of their mindset is within their emotions will require that you really say less and get straight to what's going to really be relevant.
Say more about that. That's really cool. I'd like to kind of dive a little deeper into that.
So if you want to start to connect to people and be able to influence and move people, humans are driven by emotion. So you're going to have to get into the psychology and do it ethically. But when we start to look at the vast dimensions of our psychology and our emotions, this is our biggest fears, our biggest dreams, our aspirations, what we're afraid of, where we want to go. And once you can start to understand that mapping of their world, which probably has very little to do with your product, or what you're trying to get.
Yeah, really, it does. You're right, 100%.
Yeah. Then you could start to frame. This is about controlling a frame and being conscious of speaking from a frame that they're like, oh my God, he gets me.
Yeah.
Because you understand where they're already going, and you present and package your message around where it's relevant, it sticks. So you have to understand these emotions that are pretty, ugly, inspiring of your audience. And usually the problem is lack of commitment, because you don't commit enough to yourself and you lack commitment to your audience and who you want to serve. You're trying to serve everyone. And when you serve everyone, you're serving no one. And you default to a blanket, general, safe message. And that's just the entrepreneur journey for everyone.
I want to talk, I'm going to ask Stephen and Renee to talk about what you just said. And I'd like to hear your perspective on what you just said, because it was really cool. You said a lack of commitment to yourself. So I'm trying to understand kind of what you said. So if I want to communicate to somebody, that's going to be reflected in my commitment to myself, because how I do the work on myself, how I spend the energy on myself, and how I can separate myself and take myself out of the equation, be able to look in the direction that the other person is looking in. That those abilities are going to help with communication. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because it's energy. It's what you're projecting forward. It's going to come back. And if you're projecting something precise and direct and simple, it's going to be clearly understood by the receiving it.
Nice.
But
okay.
when you commit to something specific, then it could be better understood. When it's general, then it's
and what you were saying is they're telling you, they're going to tell you what it is. That's what you said. If you can connect with them, they're going to tell you what it is. Like, because it even said something like, what I'm selling is not necessarily what they want. They want something different than what we're selling. Like, Stephen sells homes, but is that what they want? Do they want the home? Like, what is it that they really want? Do they want the security of, they want a place that they can raise their family? Like I do mortgages. Like, do people want mortgages? No, they want to pay as little as they can to live, to do it, to own a house. They want to pay as little as they can, but they don't want the mortgage. They don't want the thing I sell.
Right.
So go ahead.
May I
Yeah.
interject? I agree with that. You're right. It's not the thing. It's what that thing affords them, offers them, the experience they're going to glean from purchasing that item. If it's a house, if it's a service, a product, what's in it for them. It's always WIIFM, what's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
So whatever is in it for them, they are looking for that experience, whether it's for themselves or for their family or their whatever that looks like to them.
Yeah.
That's what they're purchasing, a lifestyle. That's
So
what.
how does your commitment to yourself, Renee, reflect that? How does the way that Prizm was saying, how does your reflection or your commitment to yourself reflect on your clients, your friends?
That's a great question. I believe that when you walk the walk, when you truly go through that experience, and trust me, this was the most painful experience I've ever lived through in my entire life. I didn't know, and I'm not being dramatic. I actually didn't want to live through it because it was so painful. And one day was no better than, like, if you have a cold, you start feeling better after a few days. You feel razor blades going down your throat 24/7 for almost 4 months. You don't want to be here anymore. Trust me, it's painful. And it doesn't get any better middle day, end of day, or any part of the day. I think when you go through it, to your question, and you come through to the other side, you can really speak to it and understand, have that compassion. I believe the greater the pain that anybody suffers, I'm not just talking about me, that anybody suffers in life, if they're fortunate enough to get to the other side, they can actually be more compassionate and more understanding, more loving towards the people that they service or they serve in such a great way. No degree can ever give you that. The degree of life can. I'd rather work with somebody that went through some, I'm sorry that they went through, but some kind of difficulty, because I know this person is really going to get me. Well, I know that because that pain that I went through was so intense, that the degree in which I'm going to understand and have compassion for them is going to be that great. Unlock your chains and unleash your greatness. I freed myself from my own chains. My greatness is here to impart and impact others in their life on their own journey.
That's awesome. That's pretty great. I love it. Stephen, like your commitment to yourself, how does that reflect in communication to other people?
I'm always just trying to understand myself better, and then I also heavily reference myself when it comes to how other people function. It's not going to be identical, but if someone's scared, they're typically going to do something. If they're happy, they're going to do something. If they want something, they're going to do something, whether that's to step up and step out or to recoil in a corner. And I've done pretty much all of the above. So I just try to remember all the examples that I've gone through and how I reacted. And there's just a lot of introspection in my life because of the damage that I've done. Like, I used to be like a walking tsunami, and I look at those experiences and I'm like, so, okay, this weather system's forming, and then this happens, and there's an earthquake, and why is this all happening, and how do these sequences keep happening? And then at the same time, you can also look at pleasure, the things that have made people happy. And it's not always these huge things in life. It's little things, little memories, little mementos, a touch. And so I just try to be aware, because sometimes in a lot of ways, when you're just living in the external world outside of your family or the people closest to you, you can reset. But it's like the people closest to you know you for who you are and your habits typically. And sometimes we don't want to realize or recognize how we're truly being often enough. But when the closest people to you start to point things out consistently, you can retrace your footsteps. And I don't.
When you're the common denominator, right?
Right. And I think that we all live that way. Some people crack the code sooner. Some people unchain and unleash and do things sooner. And other people need to go through the entire spectrum of pain and then finally wake up, hopefully, and realize. So I look at all of this as, back to what Prizm was saying about, hey, if you just put something out there, it might not necessarily be the product or something, but the message hit them in a way that's like, that's what I want. And
say that again.
So many people it might not necessarily be the product, but it could be in the way you're taking care of somebody, and they're like, you know what, maybe I do want that. You showed me a different way. You enlightened me with a message. You connected to my needs that I had no idea I would even need that. And it's just fascinating about what our wants and needs are and how we can subconsciously put them out there or verbalize them like a megaphone. They never stop, right? But then when you put the right key into that lock, then all of a sudden it's that person goes, that's it. That's what I want. And it would be so cool if we could just ask everybody, you know, whether they're listening or us as listeners and on this panel, you know, what are the main keys, right, that hit you so that you open up or you don't feel threatened or you share or you put judgment away, you know? I'm always blown away by it because it's not just a product, it's a friend. Like, why are we such good friends, right? Like, there's so many ways that we get along that it's similar, and we want to keep talking about those things because we jive when we connect, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know Prizm or Renee, but I already like them just through association to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's so fascinating how we can look at communication becoming relationships we sever, you know, to all kinds of things, right? If we really pay attention to the messaging and does it resonate with us, back to Prizm, right? What you're putting out there, is it something that's going to unlock, is going to be that key for somebody that goes, that's it. Those are the people I want to follow. That's the brand guy I want to talk to. Renee's the one who's going to help me find my own voice because she went through it. And we just connect and resonate for so many different reasons. But it's just about investigating curiously, as Martine would say. You know?
I hear what you're saying. I'm thinking about, and I don't want to put words in Prizm's in Prizm's mouth. And I was thinking, so I'm going to use music as an idea. So if I'm writing a song, you know, I'm sitting with the bass or a guitar or something, and I'm trying out some notes, right? I'm trying out a couple notes. I'm like, all right, cool. I like the way that goes, and I try a rhythm. I go, yeah, I like the way that sounds. You know, okay, cool. I like that groove, and I'm going to build and build and build. That's an exercise in curiosity because I'm creating and I'm at the same time I'm creating, I'm being curious. The problem that I think that we find is when we talk about the thing that Stephen was talking about, judgment. That if I played something and I didn't like the way it sounded, I go, oh, you suck as a musician, or you suck as an artist, or you suck, you know, and then we start going down this road. And then when you're bringing, then when we're bringing that person, we're bringing that person who does that to ourselves. And I'm just going to read the note that Prizm said. Then the lack of commitment that we have to ourselves, like we're not even good to ourselves. And now we're going to be talking to somebody else across the table or something. Well, how is that going to reflect? How are we going to project that lack of commitment to our own self and our own, maybe our divine or our greatness or just our art? How is that going to reflect on the other side? And like, I never even thought about that till right now. You Prizm, you took, so that's kind of like what I'm doing. I'm kind of taking that apart. Go ahead. Why don't you vamp on that, bro?
So what you're doing is you're transcending into a whole new mysterious, magical side of exploring, because you don't know what notes are going to come out, emotions, and what new sound waves are going to, manifest from that until you become transparent and vulnerable enough through the commitment in yourself to surrender to that. Being present is what Stephen was talking about, and just being open, right? So until you commit to opening up and being receptive to what that has to offer beyond expected outcomes, it's its own magical thing of let's just it be what it's going to be. You won't ever experience a new level of you because of the lack of commitment. And when that happens, you're trying to talk to everybody, you're trying to play everything, and you've lost your own style, your own personal swag, steez, whatever.
Absolutely.
It's like
Your own voice.
Your own voice. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that frequency. It's something very unique to you.
So I'd like to ask Prizm a question. Before I got married and everything, I did a lot of traveling around a lot of the world, and you meet a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures. But what do you find is kind of a universal, because you call yourself, like, you're a traveling nomad, right? So a digital nomad, or however you are,
Digital nomad. He's a
right? But you're on the move in different places, man, and different places have different cultures, and different cultures have different ways of being, and what's accepted and what isn't. But what do you find are the universals, with wherever you go? How do you fit in and get accepted or make friends? Like, what do you notice?
Everyone's definition of happiness is very different. It's all subjective. That would be one. And two, everybody's hurt and broken and healing in some way, shape, or form. And often that's what connects me specifically to people, is like everybody's going through some battle. And there's been a lot of people that I didn't like or whatever, for whatever reasons, but being compassionate, knowing like they're probably struggling and there's a reason why they're speaking to me or living their life or making certain decisions, because they're going through some battle. We're all going through some battles. So that's helped me see that, yes, we're all different, but we're all going through something.
I was coaching somebody and they said what you said. They're like, there's this guy that I don't like. And I asked him, I said, what does that have to do with anything? And it kind of brings me back to like that lack of commitment to yourself. Like when you don't like somebody else, like what is that? Like, what's that about? Like when you're talking about Steven, you're like, oh, I was at this gas station. This guy was really offensive. We can go in a direction that takes us down the rabbit hole, or we can step back and we can change our perspective. Like, what does the fact that I don't like this guy have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't have to do with that person. It has everything to do with myself. Everything to do with myself. And where's the commitment now? The commitments to myself is to go down that rabbit hole, or to curiously investigate where that's from. How is that a reflection of me? And what part of me do I want to, based on what Prizm is saying, like, what do I need? What needs to be healed?
But how much was also made up in my head? Like the smell triggered all this stuff that I don't know. Like, I have no idea. Maybe this has a BO problem and he showers twice a day. I don't know. Is he a bad person? Is he somebody I wouldn't invite to a party? Like, this is like, why? What the hell? So it's so interesting. All of a sudden this tape starts to play and it's like, where am I getting this shit? What bad movie do I have to
Exactly. That's awesome. I love that. So let's talk about patterns in the opposite of curiosity. Like, what are the patterns that you found that you've worked through that when you weren't being curious, that when you weren't investigating curiously? What were some of those patterns?
If I jump in on this one, I'll chime in the chat here. I think it's really, like I said, I was running through life. In corporate America, I used to look forward, and I wrote this in my book, I used to look forward to days off, not because it was a day off. I look forward to the day off to do more work. Is that like nutty? Talk about running through life. Because I was like, okay, if I could do more schedules for my teams, I could get this much more done and this much more done. And then I could be more present with them when I'm at work. I never thought about being present for myself. Mm-hmm. I thought, what more can I do? Who looks forward to a day off to do more work? I'm like, okay, I work these 2 days. I could get this many more done. I could stay up till midnight. I could get up early and I could get even more done. That was my mindset. It was like, oh, thank gosh, there's a day off coming up, because retail, it's not like a weekend off. It's all different days scattered. And that's what I was doing. I was on this hamster wheel, running with no escape route. And I wasn't even looking to escape is the thing. I was like going on the wheel like this and going faster and picking up momentum as I was going. But the thing is, that momentum was picking up speed as it was going downhill, and I crashed and burned because I was taken out of life with the illness. It was very reminiscent of today. Here we're having this conversation. I couldn't be with the public. If I was, I had to wear a mask. It's like a deja vu. I was self-quarantined before self-quarantine became a thing now in 2020. I mean, I was a prisoner in my own home, in my own body, in my own mind. I was literally taken out of life, locked away in my apartment with myself, me, myself, and I. That was it. It wasn't like catch up on your soaps, read a book. I was in so much flipping pain. I didn't want to do anything. I looked forward to going to sleep to get out of the pain. The thing is, I wake up crying because of the pain. Because it was, like I said, it's like razor blade sharp. You just want to get out of your own skin. And nothing was getting better. It's like, holy cow, what do I have to do? And doctors couldn't even help me. I'm like, oh, what did I do so wrong in life to deserve this punishment? Is probably, you know, what I was probably thinking, like, what could I have done wrong? And it wasn't that I did anything wrong. Well, it was. I don't want to say no judgment, right? That it was wrong of running through life and not stopping. But that is what happened. I did crash and burn. And thank God I was able to get the flames, you know, fanned out. And it wasn't me. It was, as I said, getting quiet and just being quiet. I wasn't spiritual at the time. So I had no idea really, you know, listen to this, do this. I wasn't in any kind of, you know, spiritual mindset. I literally just didn't even know what was going on. I was running through life and then I was pulled out of life, literally pulled out. I think it was just like, get out of here because you're gonna be 6 feet under if you don't stop this crap. And I had to stop, not because of a want or I should stop because of this. I was just taken out of life and no contact with anybody, family, friends. I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak at all. There was no voice. 2013, I wasn't like with the cell phones and Zoom and
text messaging and all that stuff. Yeah.
No, I was alone. I was literally alone in my own hell. And it
so
was.
What was so I got it. I got the story. So what was the metaphor? Like, what's the metaphor? Like,
the metaphor bottom line was the metaphor is because I was not paying attention to me. The metaphor was the pain of not speaking up in my life manifested in my health. That was the metaphor.
And then you learned, and then at what point did that change? What point did you get your voice back? Like, what was the click? Were you like taking medicine and you got better, or was it like something shifted and then that shift was the domino effect to what was next?
I'm going to try to make this really a short, succinct answer, but it wasn't like a mind shift. It was because again, I wasn't spiritual and it wasn't anything like that. It was the time, time out of life because I had to heal. I had to heal. My mind, my body, my spirit, I had to heal in every way. And it wasn't getting quiet and allowing healing to take place. Doctors couldn't give me any medication. I had voicemails and voice messages coming from my doctor to go for more blood work. I had close to 19 vials of blood taken from my body to try to figure out what is wrong with her and how can we help her.
I got that. I'm going to cut you off. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm actually trying to find a different thing. It's like, okay, I got that. So they were tumbling down. Things were tumbling down, right? And then you found yourself like disconnected from life. You were self-quarantined. And at some point, something shifted. And I'm not saying it was spiritual or it could have been just practical. I'm real curious in what shifted. Like, what shifted? What did you notice?
I noticed. I'm actually thinking about this because that's a good question. It's a great question. I think it was just shutting up and being quiet for a change.
Okay, so you were this person that's going. You don't shut up. You just talk. Now you can't talk. And then you finally realize maybe I should shut up for a second and listen. Is that what you just said? What happened? What happened when you finally stopped talking? What did you hear? Think about that.
I'd
like to think about that. And then will you remember that question, or do you have kind of an answer? You have a response?
No, I can answer you. Okay, I think the answer is the sound of silence. Just being still and being instead of doing. We're always in the doing mode, but allow and let be. Allowing myself.
You found yourself being?
I could do nothing else but be. I had to just be.
Yeah, I got that, but I don't believe life is about victimhood. So when you say I couldn't do anything, like I think people make choices, and maybe they don't. Maybe like they're going, well, I didn't really make that choice. I find when I really talk to people that there was a part of them that made that choice. There was a part of them that that chose that. And it could have been your higher self, or just could have been this more practical self. But it sounds to me like what you were saying was, you were going. You couldn't go anymore. You had to put yourself in a house. You couldn't talk. It was like razor blades, so you couldn't talk. And it's like the world's just saying, like, stop talking, for lack of a better word, shut up. And I'm going to make sure you shut up by stabbing you in the neck every day. And the only thing you want to do is go to sleep. And then, and then you got to wake up because you're in pain. So, and that's like a lot of people live that life. Like that's a metaphor for not just your life, but for so many people's life. Like how many people out there just go to sleep just to get out of the pain of their own life. And then when they wake up, they go, oh shit, it's Monday. Like there's a problem with that. Right. And and so what I hear you saying is that there was a point that there was a shift. There was like an awareness. And that awareness was being, is that what you're saying?
Was to stop running through life and just slow down. And I'm going to share something, which isn't really, I'm just going to share it.
Please.
I went back into my job at the time, the corporate world, because I was on a leave of absence for about 4 months because I was so contagious. And I made promises. I made a promise to God as well, the highest power of highest powers, that I would stop the behavior I was running through life with, and I would slow down. And in one of the chapters, I even wrote, old habits die hard.
Yeah, they do.
Because they do.
Yeah.
And I'm very transparent in what I wrote about, because if you can't put yourself out there, then why write anything? But I really do put myself out there because I'm as human as the next person. There's no holier than thou. There's, no way. It's just, I fell back. I fell off the wagon, so to speak, in life, because I made the promise to myself, to my best friend, to God, that I would stop that insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Well, I did that. I didn't mean to. My intention was to be better, be a better me. I promise I won't do this anymore. I can't go through this again. I promise I'll be better. And I made that promise, and it stuck for a little while. But slowly it came seep the behaviors. The comfort zone that was not comfortable came seeping back in. And I had to stop, before I fell back again and got sick, I had to stop and realize what was happening. And I did, because there's no way I felt that if that happened again, I would not survive another go around of that.
What I love about what you're saying is it sounds like you reformulated your relationship with your word. Like now you honor your word differently. Like you gave your word, because we all give our word. People give their word and then they go back on it. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
I didn't think it was going to be me. I didn't think I would do that. When you promise God, you don't think you're going to go back on your word. I'm like, oh no.
Trust me, a lot of people promise a lot of stuff to God and probably go back in the other direction. What do you think?
I didn't think I was that person. I didn't think that would be me, because I was so committed, because the pain was so great, like really intense.
No, I got that. I was talking about the whole other thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that? Like, people make promises and they don't keep them. Like, what do you?
It happens when you're not in control and the space around you is not yours. I mean, it sounds like Renee created the intentional space for a reset. Even though the answers were not quite there, the how. But first you just said, you know what, I'm going to regain and reground in my space to reset whatever that's going to look like. And when you don't control the space and set that intention forth, everybody else starts pulling you in all these different directions. And that's when you say yes to everything. And powerful communication is really about learning the power of no, to create a filter in your space, in your aura, particularly from a branding and marketing standpoint of who you're meant to serve. And when there is that commitment to yourself and you know your highest self, at a more deeper level, you know who you're meant to serve because you took the time to get to know. And when you know who you're meant to serve and you know that you're not for everybody, you know to say no more is your biggest responsibility. And so that's when your relationships become powerful.
So when I'm thinking about branding, I'm kind of thinking about myself. Like, if I want to brand myself, I want to brand myself for everybody, right? And what you're saying is like, no,
because, well, you know what? There's no right or wrong. But if you want to be more efficient with your energy to manage what you put out and have everybody come to you, then you have to commit to not being for everyone and define who you're for, so that when people see you, they know that's for me. He's speaking my language. He's touching my emotions, because you know who the psychographics, the psychology, the aspirations of your type of people that you want to cater to. And you won't ever start to do that until you start to receive business and people are throwing money at you and you say no. And that's, to answer your question, that's the pattern I saw in my business. Is money was coming left and right. But I only knew people on an artificial, superficial level, because I never gave myself the time to commit to a certain type of audience, because I was working with so many different types of people. And so that's the pattern that I saw, is I was saying yes to everybody. It was fun, but your own blessings, your own success will flip-flop on you.
Yeah.
Until you can acknowledge it's time to say no and build a powerful portfolio and more powerful intentional relationships.
Barbara Ham said, personal boundaries. So I see that the no is like, personal boundaries are so important in order to serve others in a better way. Seems to me like it's kind of the same. It's a different version of saying the same thing.
It's about creating space, because when you say no to people and no to things that are depleting you and taking
you
more,
draw a line, right? Or you draw a line.
Yeah. I mean, building balanced relationships are just an exchange of energy. So the more that you can acknowledge what's depleting you, then you create space for what's going to honor you, what's going to respect you. And in business relationships, you have to be respected and valued from the very beginning, from the first call, if you want to establish the rapport and the respect that you need to be able to guide them and facilitate them towards some healing or for some solution.
Yeah.
So it's about creating space.
Yeah, we talk about creating the curiosity theory. We talk about creating safety, respect, and trust. Like that's foundational. Like nothing's going to happen without that.
Sometimes our space is just too cluttered with a bunch of things. It's all pulling and taking from us. It's not adding on to us.
Yeah.
And it sounds like like that's the vortex Renee was in.
I think one of the biggest challenges is not understanding how we want to live our own life. And that's kind of like a melting pot of what we're also talking about here. We just randomly go through life as well. And we don't clearly define who we want in it, what we want to do while we're here, what we want to leave behind, who we're hanging out with, what we want to give back, what we do to honor our body, what we do to free our minds. I mean, one of the things that it's kind of like my biggest struggle, because I don't function as a completely organized person, right? With standard operating procedures for everything. I'm more of I can just figure shit out, and it just happens and it works, and I have a strong drive, and that's all good. But if I wanted to drive to New York and I didn't have a GPS, I wouldn't know where to go. If I wanted to fly an airplane and I didn't have the manual to actually start the engine, because you can't just press a button and turn it on. And so those are the things that I keep focusing on every single day to become more habitual in those actions, so that I'm living how I want to by design, and incorporating things that become habitual in my life, so that I can cut out things that don't belong. And that I don't beat myself up when things go wrong because I left it up to chance again. And it's like Edison or any of these great inventors, they just looked at failure as one step closer to success, right? And I don't know how many people, whether they're listening or us, again, on this panel, even realize that, or just look at life as one big giant experiment where we get to the place that we set out to get to once we saw a clear path of where we wanted to go. And unfortunately, I just don't think enough people set goals. They dream, but the dream has no merit, right? You wake up from dreams, and then you're just like back to work or back to wherever you were in that moment. And so it's just fascinating. And one of the other things that I wanted to say is, while we're failing, fail forward, but at the same time, don't be so critical on yourselves. Like, don't put yourself back 10 paces when you made one forward step. And that took courage, right? And it's also how we communicate with ourselves while we start to take chances. And because everyone is so different, to each person's point on here, we all are so different. Sometimes our voice is so loud and so critical and so wounding that we don't even want to hear ourselves criticize ourselves. So we play it too safe, and do nothing. So, I mean, communication all around, especially the internal voice, and then also expressing where do we want to go with our lives, and then figuring out how to get there, and then having the courage and reminding ourselves it's cool no matter what. I'm still getting there. Even if I just went back that way, I'm going to swim upstream until I get past that current and go with the current,
Yeah.
Takes work.
So there's two parts to, today's conversation, and I'm going to work with next week and have the second part. And the first part is curiously investigating, is all the stuff we were talking about tonight. And then from that point on is, we call it honestly expressing. This is the other version of that. How do we honestly express ourselves once we can look, and how do we then bounce back and forth in conversations when what we're saying so often isn't heard the way that we meant it, or what other people are saying to us, we didn't hear it the way that they meant it. And so there's this dance of curiously investigating and honestly expressing. So I want to thank you guys all for coming and hanging out with us tonight. They did just an amazing job of just your story, Renee. I love how your story really became kind of the metaphor for all of our conversation. I want to thank you for that. And, the losing your voice, and then the struggle of that, and then getting your voice. And then, Prizm's, all the wisdom Prizm's like this Buddha to me. He's like the Latino Buddha to me, because he just always brings like such really cool wisdom. And whenever I watch his videos, I want to encourage you guys to watch Prizm. He's on this amazing journey, and he just talks about his life, and he just brings his life. It's like so beautiful, and it's just so straight up about it and so honest about it. And in that honesty, I'm able to find myself in your honesty, Prizm. I want to thank you for that, just in what you bring. And you brought so much to tonight's conversation. And Stephen, you're my brother, man. I always love having you to be, being a part of it. So real quick, before we shut down, we'll start with Renee, and then we'll go with Prizm, and then we'll go with Stephen. So Renee, tell us a little bit about what you got going on, what you're doing, how you can help people, and how they can get a hold of you.
Well, I've got my coaching program. I have my book, it's Finding Your Voice, Unlock Your Chains, Unleash Your Greatness. I'm on all social media platforms, on LinkedIn, I'm an affiliate for Be Connected. It's a platform for connecting. I'm a big connector with your ideal clients. So I'm an affiliate founding member for that organization. We just launched today, so that's great. And then I just love to be able to, serve others. I'm here to serve. So if anybody's looking for me on, Facebook, I've got my own group there, Finding Your Voice. Please join my Facebook group. I've got the business page, Finding Your Voice. It's all about the voice, and I love helping others share theirs. So I've given a platform for that. So please connect with me on social media, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I'm all over.
I love it. Thank you. And your book is what, on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's called Finding Your Voice, Unlock Your Chains, and Unleash Your Greatness. So, there you go. You could look it up by my name. It'll come up real fast. And
awesome. Will you put a link? Will you put a link here? Go back and.
I will.
That'd be great.
Do
That'd be awesome. Cool.
I will make sure. I
Prizm.
do that.
Well, I've been branding for 15 plus years, so I specifically build brands for powerful leaders, influencers, experts that basically want to attract more business powerfully and with very clear messaging. So I will put is there somewhere where I can put my website and you can just check out the work there? The work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And anyone wants to reach out or has questions, I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. That's my jam.
That's awesome. So I want to just give you a real quick plug. A good friend of mine, you were talking to Ann Amaral. She's a real estate agent. She was looking to looking to figure out what her brand was. She could not stop raving about you today, Prizm. She could not. She's like, I have been in this business for 30 years and I could never figure out what it was. I talked to Prizm for like 50 minutes and I'm crystal clear on like what everything. So that's an amazing ability to be able to bring that kind of clarity and that kind of focus to somebody. So if you're looking to brand yourself, listen, Prizm's the guy. Because there's only one person I would send people to. It's Prizm. Seriously. So go get him.
Thank you.
Steven, my brother, tell us about you. Tell us about all the different books you're writing and all that.
The one that's out there on Amazon, the way my name is coming up, Stephen Wener and the Communication Code, that's more designed around sales, but it also helps you find your own story and your own worth in the conversation. I find a lot of people don't connect to themselves enough when they're trying to connect somebody to their product, right? You need to put yourself in it. So find your story. So that's on Amazon. There's a book that I have that's coming out. It's called Squeeze the Egg, and it's a fictional book all about the pressure we put ourselves under in life. And if you've ever tried to break an egg, if you palm it, you really can't. It's perfect pressure. So it's kind of like the definition of insanity, but told in a fable. And so I do a lot of coaching and sales training, and you can find me at coachingwithsteve.com. Again, coachingwithsteve.com. So, and I'm very open to having interesting conversations with people to help them unlock what's been holding them back when it comes to stepping it up and like achieving their own, not just personal greatness, but financial, like how to be successful in your own right in business. So I appreciate it, Martin. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you guys all hanging out. Let me just say a couple words and I'll be right back and I'll say goodnight to you guys. So tonight's conversation was called Curiously Investigating and how we can improve our communication skills so we can be better people, better human beings, better fathers, better mothers, better friends, all those kinds of things. So when we start to take honest looks at ourselves, when we start to become aware of like what's going on, then what we do is we start to tap into ourselves, and then we can start to tap into other people. And you've seen how Renee talked about how she was able to tap into herself, and Prizm, made quite a few different analogies of how to do that, and Stephen as well. Once we can tap into ourselves, then the next step is how do we tap into other people? How do we say what we want to say to other people in a way that we are heard through our truth, but our honest truth, in a way that empowers people, in a way that inspires people. And next week we're going to have a conversation called Honestly Expressing. So I want to invite you to come check that out next Tuesday night, 7:00, right here. Thanks a lot for hanging out. Have a great week.